There are a lot of options for gear out there, and I've tested and used a ton of different sleep systems, tents, and packs. Depending on the trip, I'll often pick specific gear that I know will perform well depending on the conditions and the weather that I'm gonna encounter. But what if I could only choose one pack, one tent, and one sleep system to act as my big three for every trip? And on this trip, that's exactly what I did. I picked a pack, a tent, and a sleep system that I think are the best out there for the majority of conditions. If I can only have one pack for every trip, it needs to be able to carry a lot of weight, as I'm on trips where I'm carrying 40 pounds due to water carries and needing to bring extra gear in order to stay warm. The pack needs to tick a couple other boxes as well. First of all, it needs to be lightweight. I don't want to be carrying a super heavy pack like the pack that I carry in the wintertime that weighs over 5 pounds. The other thing is that the pack needs to provide access to water bottles, ideally through a side pocket that I can reach. It's crazy how many packs are out there that have side pockets where I can't reach the water bottles at all. And I'm not super inflexible or have super short arms. They are kind of T-Rexy, and I do have bad shoulders, but still there are packs out there that have addressed this problem, and the pack that I'm going to choose for my number one is one of those packs. For those of you who follow the channel, it's going to be no surprise that the pack that ticks all of those boxes is the REI Flash 55. The Flash 55 is insanely comfortable. I can easily carry 40 pounds in here, no problem, and it's kind of lightweight at just over 1.2 kilograms. For a pack that carries that much weight, it is pretty lightweight. The other extra feature that it has that I love is that it has extra water bottle pockets that sit in front of the side pockets, which makes it really easy to reach back and grab your water bottle. And it also opens up those side pockets to carry extra things, which I often do, like tent poles or a chair. This is the 2023 version of the REI Flash 55. They made some changes compared to the old version. One of them is that they added an adjustable torso, which is one of the reasons why this pack carries weight so well. You're able to customize the fit a little bit better so that it carries the weight better on your shoulders and hips. It also uses very stiff foam, which helps transfer the weight from the pack onto your hips and makes carrying a lot more comfortable. Another really nice thing about these pockets in front of the side pockets, other than being able to access your water easily, is if you are in grizzly bear country like I am right now, you can carry your bear spray in there and then know that you're going to be able to access it really easily. I've been charged by a grizzly bear. I had to pull out my bear spray and I sprayed it in the face at about 6 to 10 feet. And I didn't have a ton of time in order to do that, about 3 to 4 seconds before the bear was that close to me. And if my bear spray was in a side pocket that I couldn't easily access, I probably would be dead right now. I'm gonna keep hiking so I can get to camp and get it all set up and share with you the rest of the big three. There are some other go-to items I brought on this trip that are the things that I would bring if I had to use them for every trip for basically the rest of my life. And one of those is the Hoka Speedgoat 5 shoes. These shoes are grippy, they're comfortable, they're phenomenal. They keep my feet feeling great day after day, even on long days with tough trails and tough ground. We all have a go-to karaoke song. Sweet Caroline, ba ba ba. It may not be the most popular song or the one that's from the most famous artist, but it's something that feels right and fits you. That's what my big three is for me. It's gear that I find myself reaching for when I just need something that I know is gonna work and feel good. Before we get to camp and I share with you the rest of the gear for this trip, I want to tell you a secret about the sponsor of today's video, Garage Grown Gear. Garage Grown Gear is my go-to and favorite online store for ultralight and cottage gear, but that's not the secret. The secret is that they carry what's becoming my go-to sun hoodie for hiking. This is the Appalachian Gear Company 80/20 hoodie, and it's made with alpaca wool. I've been testing out a lot of alpaca wool products over the last little while here, and the 80/20 hoodie from Appalachian Gear Company has been my favorite. I'll have links in the video description to Garage Grown Gear, which carries this hoodie, so you guys can go check it out for yourself. Alpaca wool is pretty magical. It doesn't stink even after wearing it for 5 days straight of hiking and sleeping in it, which I've done. I had people smell me and they told me that I did not stink after. It's also more durable than merino wool, and it holds on to less moisture and dries faster than merino wool. The Durson X-Mid 2-person tent, the regular version, not the pro version, is like the Sweet Caroline of tents. It doesn't take a maestro in order to use it, and it fits in pretty much any scenario. I've used the X-Mid in scenarios ranging from couples trips in the Canadian Rockies to solo trips on the West Coast. The X-Mid has a lot going for it. It's easy to pitch, it's lightweight, storm-worthy. I've had it in some pretty crazy rain and wind, and it can fit 2 25-inch wide sleeping pads side by side, no problem, which is amazing if you're sharing the tent with someone else. Choosing a tent out of all of the tents that are out there was one of the tougher decisions that I had to make when choosing this big three. But the X-Mid stands out for a bunch of different reasons other than the ones that we already went over. I'll tell you about them as I get my dinner set up. My dinner for tonight is my go-to Bushka's Kitchen. If I had to choose only one meal out of all the meals out there in order to eat for every trip for the rest of the year or for the rest of my life, it'd probably be Bushka's Kitchen. And I'm gonna be using my BRS 3000 stove, little ultralight stove here, paired with a Toaks titanium pot to cook it up with. This is just a really nice, ultralight, easy to use system. But back to the tent. I know that's what you guys are waiting for. One of the things that I knew that I wanted was a trekking pole tent. So while traditional tents, you have to set up the inner and then set up the fly afterwards, with a tent like the X-Mid, everything just goes all up all at once. So if it is raining, you're not getting the inside of the tent all wet, which is a really big plus. I also find trekking pole tents quicker to set up. If you're not used to them, it might be a little bit tough, but as you set them up more and more, you get really quick at it. I'm gonna be using a pink titanium spoon for my meal here, and something actually that I haven't mentioned in any videos yet that I'm kind of testing out and seems to be working really well is that the Sea to Summit mugs, these collapsible mugs here, fit onto Toaks pots as lids really easy. They actually just stick right on there and you can shake it, you can bang it around, and it just stays. I forget where I heard about this, but it's a really neat way in order to get a cup as well as a lid that stays onto your pot a lot easier. When I was through hiking the Great Divide Trail, I prioritized weight more than anything else. And for that reason, I chose the Thermarest X-Lite sleeping pad for the entire 1,100 kilometers of that trip. But most of the time, I'm prioritizing comfort over weight for sleeping pad, followed closely by warmth and then weight. For that reason, the REI Helix is my pick if I could only choose one sleeping pad for all of my trips for the rest of my life. This pad is an excellent all-arounder. It's quite warm enough for 3-season use, no problem, and probably warm enough for winter if you live in some of the warmer southern US or warmer parts of the world. It's also quite comfortable. It's probably the most comfortable sleeping pad that I have ever used, up there with sleeping pads like the Etherlite XT. There's some other good all-around pads like the Nemo Tensor, the Rab Ionosphere, and the Xped Ultra 5R, but none of them are as comfortable as the REI Helix, and all of them are actually quite a bit more expensive. The REI Helix only costs $160. As I was putting together this list, I realized that all of the items are pretty affordable relative to a lot of the really high-end items out there, and I think I did that kind of subconsciously. I realized that if I was gonna have to only go with one item for the rest of my life, I'd want it to be something that was approachable and affordable for most people out there. My sleeping pad installation is no exception. This is the Hammock Gear Econo Boro quilt. It's a very affordable quilt, and if I'm going backpacking, I'm choosing a quilt the majority of the time. And I'll tell you why I think a quilt is a better option, especially why I think it's a better option for me, but I'll also let you know what my choice would be if I had a gun to my head and I had to choose a sleeping bag. There are 3 reasons I like quilts better than sleeping bags. The first is that they're lighter weight. While they do have an enclosed bottom like a sleeping bag, the top part is wide open, and you save a lot of weight by not having the bottom of a sleeping bag here with both materials as well as zippers. The second reason also has to do with this open nature of a quilt. I find that quilts are a lot more versatile in a range of temperatures. You can use one quilt in temperatures ranging all the way from 20 degrees Fahrenheit up to 60, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're probably going to be fairly comfortable. Much more comfortable than I find you would be in a sleeping bag. And that's because if it's very warm out, you can just leave the quilt wide open, kind of just drape it over you like a blanket, stick an arm out, stick a couple legs out, and you're going to be able to dump heat really easily. And then if it starts getting cold out, or if it's a very cold night, you can use the pad straps, lock the quilt onto the sleeping pad, do up the neck snap at the top here, cinch it down around your neck, and really lock in heat really easily. The Econo Boro that I have here is rated for 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and I've used it down to that temperature, and I've also used it up to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and I've been comfortable at both those temperatures and everything in between. The third reason is that I can toss and turn inside of a quilt, especially if it's locked down onto the sleeping pad with the pad straps, really easy, a lot more easily than with a sleeping bag, and that allows me to sleep more like I am at home. I can go from one side to my back to the other side, and I'm not going to get all tangled up like I do with a sleeping bag. But if I had to choose a sleeping bag, gun to my head, it'd be the Decathlon MT900 with a comfort rating of freezing, which is 0 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Fahrenheit. This sleeping bag has a lot going for it. It's very affordable, especially for the weight. To get a sleeping bag as lightweight as the MT900, you'd have to be paying 2, 3 or more times as much as the MT900. Check out this video if you want to optimize your camp life and avoid a lot of mistakes that I find and see people making when they're getting to camp. I wish I knew these tips sooner, because when I figured them out, they're game changers for me.